What if Lelouch from Code Geass led the rebellion in Star Wars? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The barren landscape of the Outer Rim stretches endlessly under a blood-red sky as a small rebel cell retreats to a nearby fortress. Behind them, stormtroopers advance, supported by TIE fighters and AT-ATs. Amid the chaos, something happens. It is a faint shift in the Force as the energies converge together into a single spot. Amidst the ruin of the recent battle, these energies coalesce, and a figure materializes. Lelouch v. Britannia stirs from the ground, appearing amidst the wreckage of the fleet, hidden by the twisted metal and ignored by the Imperial soldiers, disoriented but unharmed. The last thing he remembers is the world of C, the culmination of his Zero Requiem, a peace brought with his life. And now he is here, in a place that reeks of war and oppression. His violet eyes snap open. He pushes himself upright, taking in the scene before him. Rebel fighters huddle behind a makeshift barricade as they try to retreat into the fortress, but the fire from the Imperial troops is too great. He can already hear the mocking jeers as they pursue the enemy forces, shouting at them to kill the rebel scum and bring glory to the Empire. The sight ignites something in him as he hears the mockery, the condescension of those who see themselves as superior. Another empire, more tyranny, crushing those who dare to defy it. Another battle for him to win. Lelouch rises to his feet, brushing sand off his black coat. His mind begins to race, analyzing the battlefield with the precision of a chessboard. The stormtroopers advance in a pincer formation, while a central squad with armor prepares to close in for the kill. But Lelouch recognizes the Empire's flaw, their overconfidence. The units are too spread out and unable to support each other. As he steps out of the shadows, one of the rebels notices him and asks who he is.
I'm someone who can win you this battle. If you want to live, do exactly as I say.
He begins shouting orders to the remaining rebels, and soon enough, a speeder piloted by the squad leader hurries forward towards the command squad. Rather than moving directly in, it sweeps in a wide arc, taking all their fire. This distracts them, giving the rebels a chance to take the other squads. The stormtrooper command tries to organize his men, but Lelouch rushes towards him, his violet eyes blazing. The sigil of Geass glows crimson in his left eye, flaring with unearthly power. The commander freezes, his will bent to Lelouch's.
You will order the stormtroopers to surrender.
All units, stand down. Lay down your weapons.
Confusion ripples through the Imperial ranks, but the order is clear. It gives the rebels the chance to rally and focus them down, cutting down those who hesitate. The rebels move quickly to disarm those who do.
Who are you? Who I am doesn't matter. Now, take me to your leader. We have much to discuss, and I have vital questions to ask.
The rebels exchange uneasy glances, but nod, leading Lelouch inside. He glances back at the smoldering battlefield, a determined glint in his eye.
This galaxy is nothing but another chessboard.
Inside their base, the soldiers gather, where they contact the rebel leadership to discuss their situation. The rebel commander leads him into a central chamber, carved into the rock, a hollow table displaying the leaders of the rebellion. A man in simple robes, Luke Skywalker, turns toward him first. His blue eyes seem to pierce into Lelouch's very soul.
You're the one who turned the tide back there. Who are you?
Lelouch's expression softens, sensing something different about this man, something otherworldly. He realizes that deception will not work on him, so he takes a deep breath.
My name is Lelouch v. Britannia, but where I'm from is complicated. What matters is this. I've seen empires like the one you face. I've fought them, and I've won.
You speak as though you've led revolutions before. What's your angle? Why help us?
Because the empire you fight is no different from the one I overthrew in my world. I won't stand by while tyranny crushes those who dare to resist it.
You've proven your resourcefulness, Lelouch, but you're asking us to trust a stranger with our entire rebellion.
I understand your hesitation. Trust is earned, not given. You don't need to give me an army, but let me help at least in whatever way you see fit.
I believe him. You're not from this galaxy, are you? I can sense it. Your presence in the Force feels different. Like you don't belong here.
Lelouch frowns, his mind racing as he questions what he means. A dozen questions running through his mind. But Luke smiles knowingly.
I don't know how I came to be here, but if the Force brought me here, as you claim, then perhaps it's for a reason.
The rebellion needs leaders like you. You're meant to be here.
Over the following weeks, Lelouch begins his transformation, adopting his masked persona Zero. This is to prevent his Imperial enemies from finding him. He then begins broadcasting messages to the other rebel leaders, trying to rally them together. Under his guidance, fragmented rebel cells are united into a cohesive force. Once he has the resources to challenge the Empire, Lelouch begins his offensive, identifying vulnerable points across the Outer Rim. While these might not seem like significant worlds, any defeat will look bad on the Empire, as they have more troops and a better military. This strategy works as he leads them to a string of victories. Supply lines are disrupted, and installations are sabotaged. While they are not huge, they do help challenge the Empire's control and raise the morale of the Rebel Alliance. This brings more groups to their side and emboldens their forces to strike on larger areas, starting to target Imperial supply lines in the Outer Rim. Imperial morale begins to waver. Their speed and decisiveness give the rebellion an aura of invincibility, helping Lelouch, now going by Zero, to spread his influence. Palpatine takes notice of this and realizes he can pose a threat and must be destroyed before the rebellion has a chance to gain momentum.
This Zero, he is a dangerous variable. A mind that could rival even yours, Thrawn, if left unchecked. I'll deal with him, Emperor. Every strategist has a weakness, no matter how brilliant they are. Zero will fall. He does not have the resources to challenge us significantly as of yet. See that he does. He's become a symbol, and symbols are far more dangerous than fleets or armies.
As Thrawn departs, Lelouch's war against the Empire escalates. He moves across the Outer Rim, traveling to their hardest hit and most oppressive regions. Here, the people are eager for the support and have nothing to lose. Volunteers rush to join their growing army, giving them a chance to begin their offensive. For the first time, the galaxy trembles, not at the Empire's power, but at the rising shadow of Zero. Lelouch finally decides to draw some blood to show the Empire his power. He gathers the rebels and orchestrates a daring assault on an Imperial supply convoy, his mind a whirlwind of calculations and contingencies for this battle. Before this attack, he raids an Imperial supply base and uses his Geass on a captured Imperial officer to gather information. He learns of the supply route and begins devising a plan for using it. The rebels deploy a decoy fleet, transmitting false signals to suggest a large-scale offensive. They target some of the broader territories of this supply route, making it seem as if they are planning on seizing its entirety. Thrawn, ever cautious, yet intrigued by the mysterious Zero, commits significant resources to defending the supposed target. Lelouch, anticipating this, leads a smaller force to attack the true convoy, swiftly disabling its escorts and capturing the supplies for the rebellion. The victory is decisive, the rebels' first major triumph under Zero's leadership. Thrawn, observing the aftermath, begins piecing together the fragments of Lelouch's strategy. He notes the emphasis on psychological manipulation and deception, recognizing that Zero lives on misdirection, something essential in a rebellion. Zero's brilliance intrigues Thrawn, but with this knowledge, he has a chance to strike at him. For the moment, he continues to raid and skirmish with the rebellion, focusing on lesser targets to keep him occupied. This also lets him test the waters and study Zero's techniques to try and create countermeasures. But after about a month of these minor battles, he finally makes his move on Lothal. As a major rebel stronghold, they believe themselves prepared. But instead of a minor raiding party like they are used to, Thrawn strikes with a large force that quickly overwhelms their defenses. Being so used to the small battles, Lelouch and the rebellion weren't ready for a major offensive. Lelouch, concerned but unshaken, calculates a desperate solution. It will take time to gather their forces for a counterattack, so until then the garrison must hold out. He quickly organizes a relief force, gathering whatever forces he can while the Lothal defense force is ordered to do whatever it takes to hold back the attack. This is a difficult decision, as the garrison must sacrifice entire units or ships to buy them just a bit more time, steadily depleting their forces. But it works as ships launch kamikaze strikes on star destroyers, while ground forces hold position on the surface, refusing to retreat and fighting to the last to allow the main force to escape. This slows Thrawn's advance to a crawl, but he remains cool and collected, advancing slowly until they are pushed to the breaking point. By the time the relief force arrives, they manage to hold off the Imperial fleet for a time, but it is clear that Thrawn is banking on this. He's trying to force them into an open battle as more ships emerge from hyperspace, threatening to overwhelm their forces. In desperation, Zero decides the planet is lost and holds out long enough only to evacuate the surviving troops. The plan works, but the cost is steep, leaving the rebel leadership shaken and Lothal in Imperial hands. Leia confronts Zero in the aftermath, challenging his decision to abandon Lothal with barely a fight. However, Lelouch remains firm in his decision to preserve his resources to fight battles they can win. He reminds them that their survival depends on making hard decisions and surviving for another day. Another opportunity that can crush the Empire decisively. While many generals agree with his decision, it is still a bitter pill to swallow. Cracks begin to form in their plans as they try to make their next move. However, they are much more cautious, knowing as the fall of Lothal makes one thing clear. They are not just facing some regular opponent. They are facing a genuine threat that can destroy them if they are not careful. Lelouch realizes he's dealing with a genius, a man whose intelligence rivals even his. Meanwhile, Thrawn analyzes the battle, dissecting Zero's actions. The recent battle shows a more pragmatic side to warfare, willing to trade lives for victory. To Thrawn, he can't help but respect him for looking at things in the bigger picture. But this pragmatism has a price, and he is quick to exploit it. On Lothal, he begins to play recordings of his retreat, announcing how the rebellion has abandoned them and that they have no real loyalty to the people of the galaxy. His voice resonates across the galaxy as he calls Zero a coward who hides behind a mask and is unwilling to risk his life. He shows the scenes of rebel ships and soldiers sacrificing themselves to buy time, but presents them as acts of folly, foolish gestures that still resulted in defeat but allowed Zero to save his skin. These tales are spread across the galaxy while mixed in with images of Imperial troops marching through Lothal to heighten their strength. Soon enough, some planets begin to get second thoughts. While they saw the earlier success of Lelouch in the battle, these were minor victories, and success is now fleeting. It is difficult to continue justifying these attacks when their forces cannot seem to win. The galaxy becomes a battlefield not just of ships and soldiers, but of ideals and perceptions. Psychological warfare at its finest. Loyalties are polarized as civilians and soldiers alike are drawn into the psychological war between Zero and Thrawn. The rebel cause falters as Imperial victories mount. Morale plummets, and doubts about Zero grow louder within the ranks. While he could win some victories, it's clear the new Imperial command was too much for Lelouch to handle. Even among the leadership, doubts begin to spring up on whether it is still a good idea to keep him around, or perhaps to distance themselves from him. His unorthodox methods and ruthless strategies inspire both fear and unease, but are stonewalled by Thrawn. Sensing the fragile state of the rebellion and the need for a bold move, Lelouch devises a plan to regain their trust and deliver a devastating blow to the Empire. He first presents this to Luke, who is one of the few people who seems to trust him, but even the younger Jedi is shaken up by this.
Lelouch, you've done some reckless things, but this is something else. Are you sure this is a good idea? If something goes wrong, it could be a disaster.
And if we do nothing, the disaster will only grow. I know most of the rebels don't want anything to do with me now. Now would be the best time, and it would make it look realistic.
But you'll be alone. They won't be able to help you. I won't be able to help you.
If you want to help, then you can make sure it all goes well. Listen, I don't know much about your force, but it protects you, right?
Yes?
Then let it guide me now. If I act swiftly enough, I can make sure no more destruction follows.
There are other ways to prevent suffering.
Maybe, but this may be our best shot.
He announces his apparent departure from the Rebel Alliance, slipping away from the fleet and saying that he understands they no longer wish to work with him. He makes sure it is anything but clean, loudly condemning the rebels and highlighting his disagreements with Leia. The decision sends shockwaves through the rebellion, sparking outrage and despair. To many, it feels like a betrayal, but to the few who know him best, there is a glimmer of hope that this is part of a greater plan. But to a few, it seems like a relief, as they no longer must worry about him and the bad press he brings with him. Soon after, that same ship that Lelouch departs on reappears in Imperial space without an escort. Imperial ships rush to confront him, but the infamous rebel leader announces he has grown disillusioned with the rebels and is offering his services to the Empire. Thrawn, ever cautious, allows Lelouch to prove his loyalty by assisting in the coordination of an Imperial fleet engagement against the rebellion near the Lothal system. Lelouch agrees, but as they discuss their plans, he eyes up the officers on the bridge and identifies them. During his free time, he approaches these officers one by one, using his Geass to turn them to his side. The bridge crew then begins to sabotage the ship's critical systems, including the navigation and weapons right before the battle. Soon, Thrawn receives word that the rebels are launching a daring counterattack to try and retake Lothal. As the battle commences, Thrawn keeps a close eye on Lelouch, making sure he keeps his side of the deal. At first, things seem to go well, and his directions allow them to wipe out the rebel squadron, allowing them to move in towards their command ships. However, as they advance, things go wrong. With all his attention on Lelouch, the Imperial crew that he's turned can sabotage their systems with ease. Chaos erupts aboard the Chimera as systems short-circuit, and some parts of the ship even catch on fire from overloaded circuits. As the Chimera's crew hurry to put out the fires and repair the ship, Lelouch manages to slip out on an escape pod where he joins the rebel fleet. Many are skeptical of what just happened. Luke is able to vouch for Lelouch, saying it was his way of avenging their defeats with the flagship sabotaged. The remaining Imperial ships are thrown into chaos, allowing the rebels to launch a counterattack that wrestles Lothal back into their hands. For the moment, he has their loyalty, but he knows this advantage will not last long. Thrawn quickly realizes that Lelouch had some role in this plan and is now actively hunting him and preparing for the inevitable counterstrike. He purges his ship of the Imperials involved in this sabotage, unconcerned whether they were knowingly involved or not. That blow falls on Ryloth, a critical supply hub for the Empire. Lelouch identifies Ryloth as a weak point in the Imperial supply chain and a source of discontent within the Empire. He rallies the Rebel Alliance for a massive offensive. It is a high-stakes gamble, one he believes will tip the scales of the war in their favor. However, Thrawn notices this weakness too and begins fortifying the planet so when the Rebel fleet arrives, they find themselves facing off against a full armada. Imperial forces swarm from hidden positions, hammering the Rebel ships. Lelouch, confronted with the genius of Thrawn's strategy, improvises. He deploys his Geass to infiltrate Thrawn's chain of command, using what few officers Thrawn managed to miss to try and sow chaos. Aside from sabotage, some use this chance to strike at rivals, sending out critical resources to unnecessary areas and dismantle their weapons. While these delays are not crippling, they allow the Rebel Alliance to hold on just a bit longer. However, the battle remains a massive slogging match, with both sides ferociously fighting for every possible advantage, leaving space littered with broken ships. Eventually, several blockade runners manage to slip through to the planet's surface, where they send supplies, food, and weapons to the local population. It doesn't take much encouragement from them to take up arms against the Empire. This presses the Imperials from both sides, as Lelouch also sends a list of targets to hamper the Imperial efforts, like bases and ports. Pressed from both sides, Thrawn ends up withdrawing from the battle. Ryloth is liberated, and the rebels claim a hard-fought victory, but the cost is immense. The heavy casualties leave scars on the Republic. Critical leaders and squadrons are lost, and the toll on the survivors is evident. Tensions within the Rebel Alliance reach a breaking point following the costly victory at Ryloth. In the aftermath, the leadership convenes to discuss the battle.
How many more lives, Zero? How many more sacrifices before we see the galaxy you promise?
The casualties we suffered here are considerable. We cannot continue fighting a war at this rate. One more victory like this, and the rebellion is finished.
Every battle we fight brings us closer to liberation. The cost is steep, but freedom cannot be won without sacrifice.
But at what point do we lose sight of what we're fighting for? The people who died today, they trusted us. Trusted you. Freedom won't mean much if there's no one to enjoy it.
You wear that mask. You give the orders, and yet you remain untouchable. How are we supposed to follow someone we don't even know?
You follow me because I win. Because I see the paths others cannot. I don't wear this mask to hide from you. I wear it because I must become a symbol, not a man. A man can falter. A symbol endures.
Meanwhile, aboard the Chimera, Thrawn studies the outcome of the Ryloth battle with his usual detachment, analyzing every maneuver and decision. He focuses on the cracks forming within the Rebel Alliance, recognizing the divide Zero's methods are causing.
Fascinating. Victory need not come from destroying their fleets. It will come from destroying their trust.
Thrawn begins deploying a propaganda campaign across the galaxy. Imperial broadcasts claim that Zero is not one person, but a collection of rebel leaders vying for control, placing the blame for these brutal tactics on multiple key figures in the Rebel Alliance. The Empire suggests Zero's victories came at the cost of rebels' lives, framing him as a manipulative coward hiding behind a mask. The message spreads, sowing doubt among both the rebellion and the galaxy's population. At the same time, Thrawn's forces remain intact, attacking the rebel forces across the sector, attacking isolated forces just as Lelouch did. But unlike Thrawn, they do not have the men to simply replenish their forces. He continues to attack isolated fleets, aiming to circle and cut off the fleet on Ryloth from potential support. Over several dozen ships are destroyed in a series of running battles. This places the rebels on the back foot and forces them to regroup or risk losing Ryloth. Desperate to regain momentum, the Rebel Alliance sets its sights on a lightly defended Imperial world, planning to seize its planetary defenses and turn them against an incoming Imperial fleet. However, by the time Lelouch arrives, a portion of the Imperial fleet arrives and challenges their forces. The battle becomes a deadly game of cat and mouse, with Lelouch and Thrawn maneuvering their fleets like chess pieces. This slows the rebel advance, who now faces the same struggles as on Ryloth, but this time they do not have a chance to cause trouble on the ground. The fleet holds its line enough for Thrawn's forces to arrive, and is forced to avoid being caught from two sides. But amidst the battle, Thrawn opens a direct communication channel with Zero.
Your tactics are impressive, Commander, yet you hide behind shadows. Meanwhile, I stand in the light. Let us see which proves stronger. Light casts shadows, Admiral, and you've underestimated how deep mine go.
As they cut off communication, their ships rush off to engage one another, which turns into a master of maneuvers as they move ships around. However, Lelouch sees that Thrawn is someone who can outfight him, so instead of trying to match him move for move, Lelouch makes a bold move. He orders his fleet into a full offensive, the attack holding the Imperial Armada at bay as the small ship rushes towards the Chimera. As Lelouch flies towards the ship, he watches the destruction raging around them, watching as rebel fleets fight to keep Thrawn at bay and try to hold the Imperial fleet back. But as he arrives in the Chimera, he finds Thrawn waiting for him.
I must commend you. Few have ever reached this point, standing here before me. Fewer still have tested me as thoroughly as you have. And yet here you are, speaking as though you've already won. Arrogance will be your downfall, Thrawn. Arrogance? No, Commander Zero. Did you think infiltrating the Chimera would go unnoticed?
He raises a hand, and his hidden ace springs into action. From the shadows of the corridor, a disguised rebel agent disables the turrets with an EMP blast, plunging the room into chaos. Lelouch and his team spring into motion, taking cover and exchanging fire with the stormtroopers. Thrawn watches impassively, his movements deliberate as he retreats toward the far side of the bridge, where he activates a control panel. Thrawn's hands dart to his belt, and he draws an elaborate vibroblade. With practiced precision, he lunges at Lelouch, forcing him to dodge. He tries to slash at him, but Lelouch catches the weapon and twists it aside before headbutting him. The Grand Admiral stumbles back and smiles, catching another fist and twisting it, directing him to the side.
You're skilled, but you're out of your depth.
Lelouch feints, forcing Thrawn to parry, but uses the opening to make a strike with his other hand. Thrawn catches his wrist and reverses his grip, trying to slash at him. The young commander twists aside and barely avoids the slash, though it strikes him across the cheek. He stumbles back and tries to punch him, but Thrawn blocks and redirects it, though it leaves him open for another kick that causes the Admiral to double over. Lelouch follows with a kick to the face that throws the Admiral on his back. He lunges at him, aiming to finish it off. However, Thrawn tucks his legs in and jerks back, throwing him back against the wall. The Admiral gets to his feet, throwing another punch that Lelouch barely avoids. It instead dents the wall to his side, but he avoids this strike. Thrawn pushes against him, aiming the knife at his chest. He reverses the grip and pushes it towards him, starting to graze against his chest. But rather than avoid it, Lelouch lets it dig deeper to face Thrawn. Surprise crosses the Admiral's face, but it's too late as the Geass activates, the sigil glowing red. He utters the command, "You will obey me." For a fraction of a second, Thrawn's eyes widen, an almost imperceptible break in his composure. His body relaxes, and the blade falls from his hands. With Thrawn under his control, the battle is all but won as he turns the Chimera against the rest of the fleet, forcing them to retreat. But the battle is a serious blow against the Empire, as it allows him to turn their great admiral against them. With Thrawn by his side, Lelouch continues to lead the rebellion to many more victories that push the Empire to collapse at the Battle of Endor. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.